Hello, everybody. My name's James, and for the benefit of those listening on the audio, you're listening to my regular YouTube live stream, Ask James, where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. As it's the interlull, I'm expecting a few questions that are not necessarily fantasy based, but there's obviously no team news for the weekend. Let's get straight into the questions over the next 45 minutes or so. FPL Andy says, afternoon, mate. Thought I'd check in and see how you was doing. I'm good, thank you, Andy. Managed to catch the England under-21s yesterday. What credentials has AD Boothroyd got to manage that talented group of players? I was recording with Suj for a podcast on Patreon when the game kicked off, but I did watch the second half. AD Boothroyd, we're probably at review stage for him, I should imagine. I remembered at Watford for being a very young coach who had some unique ideas. Like he scheduled a penalty shootout, didn't he? After a league game, in case they got to the playoff final, went to a penalty shootout. He went to recreate that setting in front of a crowd of a penalty shootout. It's a little bit different with no pressure, though, to in front of 90,000 fans at Wembley. England under-21s have not performed as well as they should have in major tournaments. The defeat to Switzerland in what was a difficult group with Portugal and Croatia still to come was obviously very, very disappointing. There's enough talent in that squad that he should at least be reaching those knockout stages that happen in the summer. I suggest if England don't pull that through in the next two games, his position will probably be under review. I think what happened with him was he was under 19 manager, which I think in itself probably needs questioning as well. But Gareth Southgate was obviously under 21 manager. Southgate obviously took the England job on an interim basis, got it full time, and I think similar happened with Boothroyd with the under 21s. But I think his position is probably under review. The thing is what you want really with an England 21 setup, you want a very experienced coach who understands working and developing young players, but is prepared to know that essentially the only games that matter are every couple of years. And it's obviously not going to be a hugely paid job either. So that's difficult to get the right type of coaching, but I imagine his position will be under review in the coming months if England don't do well in those next two games. He says, what do you think of everyone dissing performances by Mount, for example, just because it was San Marino? I spoke to a lot of my patrons in the build-up to the game and said, listen, everyone's going to be moaning about the system. That's the way Southgate wants to play. Accept it. So I was really surprised to see a back four last night. Whether that sticks remains to be seen, particularly as we expect Poland to play with a back three on Wednesday night. I just think the players that England have got so much better suited to a back four. I'll be honest, I wasn't looking at my timeline much last night, but I didn't particularly see anybody moaning about Mason Mount. I thought he was England's best player in the first half. Really, really good. I think it was specifically him that was missing from England's tempo in the second half. Really good Mason Mount. Can we find a way to get Mount, Foden and Grealish all in the same team? That would be nice. FPL Cobbler says, afternoon, mate. What do you make of Jude Bellingham? He's got such a presence about him that feels like like he's missing in the England midfield. He doesn't look like a 17-year-old, does he? My goodness. You imagine with him, because of his physique, he's probably only injuries that are going to get in the way from him reaching the top. I mean, look, he's already a regular for Borussia Dortmund. I really hope he plays against Manchester City in the Champions League, because that's a barometer of top test at club level. But he looks very good for England. He doesn't look like a 17-year-old. That's the best compliment you can pay him. And I guess, you think about sort of Rooney playing for England at the same age. We'd have all said the same about him. Doesn't look like a 17-year-old. Rooney had that kind of fresh face about him, that cheeky, chappy kind of look. He didn't have a natural football build. Jude Bellingham looks like a 22, 23-year-old footballer in terms of his physique and stuff. So impressive, so calm on the ball. Really good prospect. And I guess to a lot of people, he would have leapt from nowhere to be in the reckoning, to be in this squad. I don't know system-wise what suits him better yet, because I haven't seen enough of him. But really, really strong talent. And I guess he's a name a lot of people are forgetting when they're thinking about the final squad. Personally, I would have liked to have been playing for England under 21s yesterday. I think playing in central midfield with Oliver Skipp or Tom Davis would probably be better for him at this stage, personally. He's got plenty of time to develop, come into the England squad. And I just wonder if everybody's fit in the summer, you think of Jordan Henderson, Calvin Phillips, Declan Rice, James Ward-Prowse, if he wants to play Mason Mount as a deeper lying player, again, depending on system, then does Bellingham get in? So it might be that it's a little bit dependent on injuries, but he doesn't look like he's going to let anyone down. Looks a really good player. Nerd said Foden has surely got to start at the Euros. Him and Grealish have to be above Sterling and Rashford in the pecking order. And how would you compare those two with Sancho? Again, because I don't watch enough Bundesliga football, I've not seen a lot of Jadon Sancho's season this year. Very impressive. Similarities but differences between all three players, as in Sancho, Sterling and Rashford. All three are a lock to be in the squad, I think, assuming they're fit. Rashford looks like he might be out for a little while, but not a threat to the Euros. I have to say, I was disappointed with Sterling's performance last night. I felt he was the only one in that first half. He was extremely greedy. It was like he started the game and he was like, there's no way I'm finishing this game of football and not scoring. No way. Maybe as well because he knew possibly that he was only going to play the 45 minutes as a possibility. He seemed absolutely desperate. I think he had 7 shots in the first 45 minutes, which I don't know how your maths is, but that's about every 6.5 minutes or so he's having a shot, isn't he? And I think it was only 1 on target was the goal that he scored. Extremely greedy. Perhaps there's a little bit in that, and the fact he's not been playing quite as much for Manchester City. I'd recommend listening to yesterday's Clash of the Correspondents we did with Aaron Lager on FPL Pringle, and we discussed, never mind for England, we discussed if Raheem Sterling is still first choice for Manchester City. And I think Johnny's conclusion on it is that he'd probably rather that Phil Foden played now. It's really interesting. So I feel like he's probably, I wouldn't say a crossroads at his career, because listen, he hits a bit of form and you go, oh yeah, even in the Man City squad, there's no one else can do the sort of things that he can do. I mean, from my criticism of him being a little bit selfish last night, his direct running was causing absolute chaos. Must be said. It's worth remembering we're playing against bricklayers and salesmen and the like. I would definitely want Foden to play, as I kind of said. How do we get Foden, Grealish and Mount in the same team is probably more the question now. And again, I'll repeat what I've said several times. The back three limits you from being able to do it unless you play. The only way you could do it is play Mount as one of the two in midfield, be it with a Henderson, Declan Rice, whatever, and you played Grealish and Foden as the two support players to Harry Kane, get them tuck in, get the wing backs high. Although with England, because it's England and we don't keep the ball well enough when we play good teams, it will inevitably become a 5-2-3/5-4-1, in my opinion. So I think we should play a back four. That would enable us to get the 3 in the team. We could still have 2 sitting midfielders in a 4-2-3-1, or we can give Mount license to go as one of the 2, and then you can still get one of the players with pace in. But I think we're nearing that point now. Is it, rather than a case of how do we get 2 or 3 out of Rashford, Sterling, Sancho in the team, it feels to me more important now to get those link players in. What I really liked about England in the first half last night was it was really difficult to pinpoint where certain players were playing. So there was a lot of emptying spaces. So if Mount dropped deep or Lingard dropped deep, suddenly you'd find James Ward-Prowse in the 3 behind Dominic Calvert-Lewin. There was really good rotation amongst England. They played the game with a clear intent. If we haven't got the ball, we're going to go and get it immediately. I mean, XG-wise, I think it finished 5-0, so it was nearly the complete accurate football game. But England really could have had 7-8 by half-time last night. That first half performance was as enjoyable as it can be in a game like that. But yeah, I want Foden in the England team. No doubt about that for me. Dylan Farrell says, hi, James. Hope you're well. Did you catch the highlights of the Ireland-Serbia game? Pity about Trevor's performance, but we're looking improved and hope Kenny gets the time. I've only seen the goals, to be very honest with you, Dylan. So, as you'll know, I'd kind of previewed on Patreon and said that this was Ireland's big game from qualifying. Couldn't really afford to lose it, being in the group that they're in. That's also got Portugal in it as well. Azerbaijan's not the easiest fixture. Luxembourg's the 5th team in the group. But Ireland will have to beat Luxembourg and Azerbaijan home and away and Serbia at home, you think, to probably even just finish 2nd in the group. Or they'll need to pull off real upset results against Portugal. On Stephen Kenny, the Ireland manager, I don't know what the feeling is amongst the Irish fan base at the moment. I'd be interested to Message me, Dylan. Tell us more what your thoughts. But I'm guessing from what you're saying, you want him to stay. But 9 games, zero wins is quite alarming from a start. He's obviously come from a background of managing teams in the League of Ireland. It's a very different pressure managing at international level. I don't think it's necessarily his fault. I think Ireland are probably, with respect, probably got the weakest team they've had probably this century. And it needs an evolution of years to be able to develop young players to get them back into a position where they would expect to qualify. Because I think at the moment, Irish fans don't realistically expect, they will hope, but don't expect to qualify for tournaments. And I think it needs a development of a core young players to come through to help build that up. You are going to need some patience. So I get where you're at, Dylan, and wanted to give him some time. Taz says, views on Bale's remarks regarding Spurs, Wales and Real Madrid. No big deal at all. Think of it like this. He's employed by Real Madrid. He's on loan at Tottenham. Tottenham haven't given any indication yet that they want to sign Bale or take him on loan for a second year. That might be dependent on who the manager is, for example. And therefore, he's got to cover his bases. And that means if Tottenham don't buy him, the first thing he's going to have to do in pre-season is go back to Real Madrid. So what does he want to do? Piss them off any more than he already has done? I didn't have an issue with anything Gareth said. If you actually watch the video of what he said, he's nowhere near as bad as if you read the comments. When you actually watch it, you go, okay, that makes sense. Bale's not a good interviewer, actually. He repeats the same thing quite a lot in his answers. He bats a straight game. There probably is a little bit of anger with his lack of minutes with Tottenham in the Aston Villa game. The fact he was taken off against Arsenal. He obviously didn't start in Zagreb and didn't start against Villa. But I personally didn't have a problem against him playing it against Aston Villa, as I said on Monday's podcast. And I don't have a problem with his comments either. What is he meant to say? Oh, I'm desperate to sign for Tottenham, when he knows that Tottenham maybe don't want him. Difficult one for the player, actually. Nerd says, thoughts on West Ham assets for game week 31 wildcard. There's a number you can consider. Goalkeeper, Flappy's always an option. Soufal, Dawson, own goals aside. Cresswell, Souček, Lingard, Antonio. Number you can consider there, can't you? I haven't given too much thought yet to the 31 wildcard. I'm having a little bit of breathing headspace at the moment. I think if I was to have one, it would most likely be a defensive player. But if Antonio's fitness is looking good and it comes around to game week 31, then I could very easily go with Antonio, because I never worry with the fixtures with him anyway. So the fact that he plays Leicester first and then Chelsea third, I'd take a view on it and go, well, if I go Antonio, he's staying with me till the end of the season probably, and just do it. I don't think I will. I think the most likely West Ham player I'm probably to have is actually Aaron Cresswell, because I can't see me going with too many of the premiums, and therefore, though I think he's probably too expensive as a new buy, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's the highest scoring defender in the game, and he's probably going to keep creating goals for West Ham through his set pieces. So I think Aaron Cresswell is probably the standout one for me, but it's a little bit dependent on obviously what people want to do with their budgets. Jigs John says, hi James, what do you think is the best formation to consider if you still have a wild card to play? 3-5-2 or 4-4-2 seems quite popular due to the number of value mids in the game right now. Thoughts? I don't get trapped into a formation. So I could even line up potentially with a back five in game week 30. That would never be my plan to set out and go, I'm going to play a back five in game week 30. I want to pick a squad because of the potential for the opening ups of doubles and blanks, which I explained on Monday's podcast, that I definitely don't want to have 3.9 million players or anything like that on the bench. Like, I'm happier to pay the premium for someone like Aaron Cresswell, for example. So I don't have any set ideas on what the formation will be, except if I get three forwards who I want to start regularly, I will play three up front. So, I mean, I could very easily on the wildcard go Kane, Vardy and Iheanacho, for example, in which case it's three up front for me. Am I then wed to 3-4-3 or 4-3-3? No, not particularly. I'll probably have players like Souček, for example, who, that's probably a bad example because every chance I won't have Souček actually on the wild card. But if I do, I would make a week-to-week decision on whether I want to keep him or not. He's kind of ideal first sub majority of game weeks. So I'm never wed to a particular system like that. Damon Rozalski says, "Hi James, will you ever keep a beard, dear?" Yeah, I've had a shave. Yeah, it had to be done. To be honest, she don't want to kiss me when I've got a full chin worth of hair, which is not a bad thing. But I have to think of poor Harry and his little baby skin. So that's why the beard keeps going. Maybe when Harry's older, the beard will just grow permanently. But no, it's not ready for me. I don't like being smooth shaven like this. But yeah, and the hair had to go. That was looking bad. Dean Newell says, FPL Cobbler, Northampton fan by any chance? I can say that he is. Yeah. Ricky Saunders says, is that Al Hutton doing the live stream today? Ricky Saunders, can you please stop giving spoilers to the Patreon podcast? Hello, my friend. Dylan Farrell says, like the cut, James. Just got a haircut today myself. It's the little things in these times. Yes, I should be careful what I say about the missus when it's her cutting the hair. Oliver Jacobs, your England starting 11. Go. Dean Henderson in goal. I'll be back 4. Dean Henderson in goal. Trent at right back. Ben Chilwell at left back. Stones and Maguire. I would, at the moment, go Declan Rice. Ahead of him, I would play I would play Grealish, Foden and Mount. And then I think the third player for me, I would possibly go tough. Possibly still go Sterling. Possibly. But yeah, I think it's that. It's that. How as I said, how do we get Mount, Grealish, Foden, plus a fast player into the team? So you're looking at 4-1-4-1 without. And I think with that, you can alternate. If you need to drop into a 4-2-3-1, listen, any of Grealish, Foden, and Mount can do that job. Obviously, Mount would be the best to do that job. So, yeah, Mount and Rice, the best buddies as well, aren't they? They could play together in midfield. The one that you're leaving out there, which is naughty, is Jordan Henderson. I think if it's going to be an out-and-out 4-2-3-1, then I think probably Henderson and Rice. And then you probably do need to leave one of the other attackers out. And I think in terms of perhaps impact as a substitute, it would probably mean that Foden currently would be the one that would miss out. Kumar says, which teams to target for the rest of the season, fixtures or form? What's form in a COVID era? Fixtures to the end of the season, best run in my opinion is Arsenal by a distance, but you've got the Europa League problem. Liverpool, great run of fixtures, another one to target from that wildcard 31 turn. Wolves, another one. Fulham, Sheffield United, Burnley, West Brom, Brighton in a row from game week 31 is almost as good as you could ask. Everton might be the one that's underneath a lot of people's radars at the moment. Don't have a bad run at all, actually. They play Manchester City in game week 38. The only other two members of the traditional Big Six that they have to play are Tottenham and Arsenal. They've still got to play Aston Villa twice, who that's not as difficult a fixture as it might have looked in the past. They've obviously still got to play West Ham as well, but their other fixtures, Palace, Brighton, Sheffield United, Wolves, decent. Everton don't have too bad a run, actually. West Ham, decent. Southampton have got a good run now, I think, if you want to target. You need to keep people like Harry Kane and Bruno Fernandes obviously on side. And Chelsea, of course, have a brilliant run coming up as well. Just a note on Chelsea, because I think there's a lot of people looking at them as a one-week punt for game week 30, and I'd probably doing the same. It's not quite such a good run from game week 33 onwards. In fact, you'd argue it's one of the toughest runs with West Ham, City, Arsenal, Leicester, 4 of the last 6. Fulham, which is a derby, and Aston Villa is the other. The next 3 obviously looks great for Chelsea. David McCann says, have any thoughts on Roy Keane potentially getting a Celtic job? I'm going to spoil another Patreon podcast here. I don't think it's a bad appointment for Celtic. It might be a really bad appointment for Roy Keane. I find him quite a dislikable character because he's so aggressive in the way he says things. Everything's very, this is fact. This was what it was like for me in the 90s. And I think he will find like Mourinho has found, that the culture of footballers is not the same now as it was in 2005. And the methods that, for example, worked for Mourinho then don't work now. And the way Keane used to speak to his teammates in 2005, you can't speak to footballers now in 2021. So he'll need to change his style a bit. What it will be with him, a little bit like it was with Sunderland. When they're winning, it will be really good. But when they go on a bad run, it will be a really, really bad run. Do I see him turning it around to the extent that they'd overtake Rangers? Difficult to say. My immediate, if I had to answer that as a yes or no, I would say no. It's more likely to fail, in my opinion, because of what I've said. I think the way he deals with players these days, I imagine he'll get an immediate reaction, but look at it in 12 months' time. I'm not sure players will want to respond to him in the same way, personally. Be explosive, though. It'd be worth tuning in for. Keane against Gerrard in the Old Firm. Yeah, it's worth a look, isn't it? Alistair Coper says, afternoon, James. I'm planning to use my bench boost this week, but I own Bale. If I wasn't on bench boost, then I'd just start him and have bench to cover. But on bench boost, I'm not sure I can risk it. Thoughts? Thanks. I think, Alistair, you would probably have heard Monday's podcast where around about the hour mark, I gave a really good summary on Bale and can't really answer the question until the Wales games are finished, how many minutes he's played, what his recovery looks like in the build-up to game week 31. There's a good chance it's a 0-pointer. Very good chance. Obviously, if Son's not back, that increases the chance of Bale playing. But then that might also be dependent on fitness of other players, like is Eric Lamela presumably is back from suspension, 1 game ban following the red card at Arsenal. It's another one to put pressure on that. Steven Bergwijn's back fit. Lucas Moura was Tottenham's best player at Aston Villa. And obviously Lo Celso is back fit as well. I'm not sure if he's travelled with Argentina or not. I think I want to say no, he probably hasn't. No, there's no guarantee Bale plays. If I had serious doubts, would I bench boost? No. Because I think you probably find there will be another opportunity. But for the majority of people who are setting up for bench boost in game week 30, I think you should probably still pull the trigger. But a lot of them people will have Bale. This is why I never went for him. In hindsight, I wish I'd bought him for Burnley Palace and had the headache now. Yeah, absolutely. But it's exactly this. These away fixtures and that. The fixtures coming up are just not quite so appealing for Gareth Bale. I mean, I can't believe that Bale will start against Manchester United in game week 31, for example. So if he doesn't start game week 30 against Newcastle, it's a definite pin, in my opinion. Bets1604 says, hi, James. At what point in his career do you think Mourinho lost it and went from one of the world's best to what we see now? Well, I guess you'd have to say after the 2015 title win, wouldn't you? I think I've got my years right there. So he came in for the second spell at Chelsea, got it right. My theory on it now, always looking back on it, he was so fortunate to get 2 extremely high-profile players the first time around who really bought into the identity of what it was meant to be in John Terry, Frank Lampard, who were senior players in a young team, basically, and carried all the new people on. You either get on board or you fuck off, basically. Terry was still around for him the second time as well. Terry will never say a bad word, basically, about Mourinho. But it began to unravel in that second season. Then when he took Terry off at Manchester City at halftime in game week 2, it was unraveling as quickly as then, wasn't it? So, yeah, I mean, you could say, what's he achieved since? Well, yeah, he won the UEFA Cup with Manchester United, or the Europa League, also won a League Cup. They were very fortunate to win that final against Southampton. And their route to winning that Europa League is laughable when you look back on it. And it's laughable, the team that he lost to in the Europa League this year as well. I wouldn't say he's lost it. Listen, in fairness, he's done far too well as a football manager. Listen, he's still a football manager, great. I'm not arguing that. He's done far too well to be considered otherwise. I just think, like I said a few questions ago, the methods that worked for him in 2005, they just don't work in 2021 anymore. Football's changed. And in 2035, it will be different for those who are doing extremely well now. Matt Crowe says, hi, James. Hope you're all good. Yes, thank you. If Kane was to go in the summer, who would you like to see replace him? Might even have enough change to get 2 strikers. Yeah, so we'll get Haaland and Mbappe, can't we? Let's hope it doesn't happen. There's very conflicting reports depending on which journalist you listen to. There are a few that are suggesting that Real Madrid are preparing a bid. Manchester City and Manchester United might also be thinking similar. I think it's probably more United than City likelihood in terms of Harry Kane, because I don't think City want to pay that fee in a chunk when they know he can get Haaland for half the price. In terms of a replacement, it's irreplaceable. So it's nothing you can do. One of the conversations we had on our Patreon podcast on Tuesday was I asked Suj what he thought if, say, Tottenham sold Kane, bought a right back, anybody right back, Max Aaron, someone young, whatever, just better than what we've got. Milan Skriniar, centre back from Inter Milan, Declan Rice, and Danny Ings. And I said to him, if we bought them 4 players and sold Kane, are Tottenham better or worse? And he said, better. And I agree. Because if you take someone like Danny Ings plays for Tottenham every week. And obviously with him, fitness is always an issue, but then it is with Kane as well. Danny Ings will get 15 or 20 goals for Tottenham. All right, it's not going to be the power in the Premier League. It's not going to be the power of Kane's already on 17, for example. But then if you improve the rest of the team and you're better defensively, you've got a proper holding midfield player, a proper centre-back and a proper right-back, then the team's probably in a better place, ironically. So it's probably more about how Tottenham spent the money if he went. But plenty of journalists, I think David Ornstein from The Athletic's one who seemed to suggest that there were people inside Tottenham who just think that Harry Kane will finish his career at Tottenham. So it really does depend what journalist you listen to at the moment. I think, genuinely, I've said this before, I'll say it again, for him, he should leave. He should certainly leave if the manager is staying. What's he staying for? The possibility of a League Cup or something? Harry should leave. But then if Harry loves Tottenham as much as I do, then Harry will stay, right? Ray Qureshi says, hi, James. Must say I've really enjoyed the break from FPL, pal. Been doing anything of note during the deserved timeout. Timeout? What's that? It's been nice not watching football more than anything. We've still been doing our usual content and that. But yeah, I've been looking forward to this little break. I enjoyed the weekend just gone with watching only 4 Premier League games as well, rather than feeling that necessity to watch all 10 games all of the time. So yeah, I've enjoyed the little break. Anything of note done? No. Can't go anywhere, mate. Not allowed. So it's as far as taking Harry to nursery and getting Harry back from nursery is about as far as it goes at the moment. So no stories to tell, I'm afraid, unfortunately. What No Graphics says, hello, James. Heard the ITV commentator during the San Marino game mention Atomic Kitten. Made me chuckles. I thought of you straight away. That's a nice old reference for everybody there. Nerd says, how would you rate Liverpool's chances in the Champions League? Of winning it? About 1 in 8. No, it'd be less than that. 4-1, something like that. I think they've got a great chance of reaching the final. Really, really great chance. Real Madrid not at their best at the moment. Definitely not. Liverpool are still going to find Madrid and presumably Chelsea games extremely difficult if they don't sort out the defensive problems. They will not win a Champions League final against a Bayern, a PSG or a Man City with Phillips and Kabak at centre-half, I'm afraid. It won't happen. So there's a little bit of dependence on that, but they've got a chance, right? And Liverpool definitely will swing all out for the Champions League. I think there's little doubt about that. Jigs John said, do you expect Spurs to double in 32 now that the FA Cup kickoff times have been announced? So again, Jigs, I highly recommend Monday's podcast. Did about 25 minutes at the start of that pod on Monday, season 4, episode 38, talking about strategy and where games were likely to go. Game week 32 is the least likely of all the game weeks, probably. It is possible it could go in there if the Premier League decide they want Tottenham Southampton there rather than Southampton Crystal Palace. I think Southampton Palace is more likely. I think there is still a very small possibility of game week 30, but I think that's, it's Friday now. I think that's very unlikely. Game week 31 is extremely unlikely. 33, 34 is what it will be, I think, if Southampton beat Leicester in the FA Cup semi-final. Otherwise, the most likely thing at the moment is it will go into the last available midweek, which is what will happen with Aston Villa and Everton as well, which currently is the free midweek after game week 37. But as explained in that podcast, it may not be game week 37. It may be game week 35. Rather than me go over all that again, I'd strongly recommend Monday's podcast, nearly from the start, for about 25 minutes or so. We talk through that, Jigs. Joe Finney Bader says, hi, James. Is Harry excited for the F1 starting again this weekend? So the little man, he's not into football at the moment. Listen, he's two, not long. But one way of shutting him up, stick the Formula One on the TV. Just watches the cars go around. Vroom, vroom. Loves all that shit, doesn't he? So he's not, because he doesn't understand. But yeah, if he plays up a bit and I want to watch a game at the same time or something, I might just stick the Formula One on for him. Garlic 2-5 this afternoon, James. I know it's a bit away, but would you sell Cancelo or Stones and Salah or Traore for the next game week, and who for? What am I selling here? 4 players. Would I sell Cancelo or Stones and Salah or Traore? So you asked me between Cancelo or Stones. I'd probably sell Cancelo. I don't know if I'm saying that with my Sky fantasy football head on rather than my FPL head on. I think Cancelo will be saved for Champions League quite a lot. I think in terms of centre-back, I think it's a position where just generally you get less rotation. So that's all I say on that. In terms of selling Salah or Traore, sell Traore, mate. I would have thought that seems straightforward. I mean, if you've not got that wild card, you want Salah back quite quickly, I think. Game week 31, underperforming Villa. Game week 32, Leeds. Game week 33, Newcastle. Then United. Then they finish with Southampton, West Brom, Burnley, Palace. I mean, if you've come this far with Salah, you're probably sticking, I think. I could easily go back. Although I think Jota is, because of his price, is top Liverpool target for me. FPL Glasto says, how good are the England ODI team, one day international team, keep up the good work? I don't watch cricket, Glasto. I don't know nearly enough to comment on that, I'm afraid, my friend. Thelma says, James, choose one. Top 4 finish or sack Mourinho tomorrow? Sack Mourinho tomorrow, mate. We sack Mourinho tomorrow. We might finish top 4. Fairly obvious. Alistair Coper, feel bad for asking an FPL question. What's the deal with that James Rodriguez rumour? Okay. It's one of the most weird rumours I've ever heard, and that's saying something. Yeah, I don't really want to give the rumour too much attention, but there was a rumour that went around some WhatsApp groups this week in England that James Rodriguez had a sex change. What do I make of it? I think the person who thought about it has got way too much time on their hands. And if it's proven to be correct, I'll stand here and put my hands up. But I can't see that somehow. Oliver Render says, hi, James. Which players that have potential do you think will break out in the Prem next season? Obviously, there's the likes of Rafinha, Neto, etc. Anyone less obvious? Tanguy and Dombele would be good. Not from an FPL perspective, but in terms of breakout. Difficult one. I think you've picked the obvious two. Rafinha and Neto. Someone at Chelsea, maybe. So perhaps Christian Pulisic, Hakim Ziyech. I mean, although because it's Chelsea, do we expect that from them? Dwight McNeil might improve again next year at Burnley. Another name to put into the mix, possibly. Essen says, who do you think are the favourites for the Euros? Not England. Still France, I would say, in my opinion. I know they had a disappointing result the other night, but I still think France. Adrash says, hello, mate. Hope you're doing well. What's your favourite book and documentary related to football? Cheers. Favourite book was a giant book. I've spoken about this before, that my dad had. It was never given to me. My dad still got it. The Glory, Glory Nights. It was a massive book. I want to say like A3 size. Had reports and old newspaper images and stuff from Tottenham's European nights in the 60s, 70s and 80s. So for me as a kid growing up, I used to read them over and over, even though it was like from times before I was born, to get an understanding of our history, which is Tottenham's is so much built on the Glory, Glory Nights from those days. Best documentary related to football. Wow. I haven't, by the way, watched the BBC documentary yet, Football's Darkest Secret. I probably will over the weekend. Best football documentary? That's a really, really good question. And for some reason, I really can't think of anything off the top of my head at the moment. Football documentary. I'll tell you what is not. All or Nothing. Velma is responding to someone. Thank you, Velma. Rowan S says, greeting, James. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for the well wishes, guys. Appreciate that. There have been rumours in the forums about Dominic Calvert-Lewin going to United in the summer. Could he be the answer to United's striker issues? That's the first I've heard of that. Would take me by surprise. I guess if Cavani doesn't re-sign for them, then they need that type of player, you could argue. And I guess as a developing player, get someone who knows and understands the league. Dominic Calvert-Lewin will score goals if he went to Manchester United, but yeah, I don't see that at the moment. I'm not giving that's literally the first time I've ever given thought to Dominic Calvert-Lewin leaving Everton. So I'll let that one sink in for a bit. Really, not heard anything of that. I'd be surprised. They would probably have to pay more money for him than what Man City would pay for Haaland. So, yeah, get the wages out for the big Norwegian. Nenif says, greetings from Sydney, currently on a 24-hour shift. You take care, Nenif. Sherry MC says, attackers, do I need 3 big Kane, Bruno, KDB, or is 2 enough? Wildcard 31. I can see me going Kane and Bruno and Vardy, or just Kane and Vardy on wild cards as a possibility. Bruno's not a guarantee for me, honestly, not a guarantee. I look at them fixtures and I don't see many times that I'd captain him. Looking at United's fixtures, I look at game week 32. They've got Burnley at home. Kane's got Everton. Chelsea's got Brighton. Arsenal's got Fulham. Liverpool's got Leeds. I'm likely to have players from these teams, I think. So United against Burnley is that appeal. Game week 33, United have got Leeds away. Arsenal at home to Everton. Liverpool at home to Newcastle. God, honestly, can see me going Jota as long as he's had a break in the midweek beforehand. Further afield, game week 37, we've got Fulham at home. It's not as easy game as we all think. Tottenham have got Villa at home. I think I prefer Kane. Leeds have got Southampton. Chelsea play Leicester. West Ham are at West Brom. Arsenal got Palace away. Liverpool got Burnley. I can't see me captain him too much. And therefore, with Bruno, you're kind of in that position, as I've said many times. You have a captain in most weeks. You either have him and limit the damage, or you just sell him. And if there's weeks where I'm looking ahead and I think not going to captain him for several weeks, then I think I sell. I think for me to have Bruno on wildcard, I'd be captaining him against Burnley in 32 and possibly Leeds in 33. And if that's what I'm going to do, then I'll probably go with Bruno. Otherwise, I just won't. I'll swing against it. I think is the most likely thing. But I think you can go 2. It depends. Do you classify Vardy as one of the big ones or not? I mean, to be honest, if you're picking one right now, you probably go Iheanacho over Vardy. It probably depends a little bit on trying to get a little bit more information on Harvey Barnes' injury by the time game week 31 comes around for wildcards. Obviously, they're playing Man City in game week 30, so realistically, it's a conversation for afterwards. But yeah, that's kind of that. If I go with sort of just Kane and Vardy, for example, I go with people like Jota, perhaps an expensive Chelsea defender, then there's still going to be alternative captaincy options, I think, to not need necessarily those premiums. That's what it boils down to. How many do you want to captain? I mean, Gundogan's another one, right? I can easily captain Gundogan. Man City games, unbelievable price. Do I need them premiums, for example? And that's something, I'll be very honest with you, I'm really not going to think about till probably this time next week at the earliest. Thomas Morris is best Chelsea defensive asset if no wildcard left. As P. Alonso, Rudiger. I think if it's price sensitive, it's definitely Rudiger. Saw FPL Swee saying he's going to captain Alonso in game week 30. Seems to think he's got the working on when Alonso does and doesn't play, and it's opposition related. So you may want to check that out. Personally, that wouldn't be the player that I'd be going for. As Piliqueta, I think if money's no object, it's probably the standout. If money's a little bit an issue, I think Rudiger should be fine. Jigs John says, do you think Salah would do better than he has in recent times from now till the end of the season, especially with the fixtures they have? Or is it worth someone like Jota and spread the cash? To be honest, I think it's Jota and spread the cash, personally. The thing is with someone like Jota, if he was 9-10 million, you'd still be considering buying him, I think, for a lot of people, come particularly game week 31. And if he was at that price, you'd be thinking, yeah, I'll captain him as well. Psychological because of his price. You think, oh, no, I can't captain him at that price. We should be over that with Gundogan. So I personally, I think for me to have if I was to have Salah, it'll only be if I have Salah and Jota, or if Jota's injured. I can't really make the case for Salah over Jota at the moment on what you can do with the 6 million difference. It's too big a difference. FPL Dwight, will you be joining the Pookie party in Game Week 1 next season or avoiding it? Well, that depends on the fixtures, I think, somewhat. But my instinct would be avoid it. But I imagine we'll be doing a podcast soon with my friend Mark Hammond, FPL_Badger, when we got confirmation of Norwich's promotion. That's looking inevitable now. Thelma's shouting out Mike Bassett is the best documentary. Yeah, I love that one. Loved it when he called up Benson and Hedges. Tesco says, is Neto worth a punt? Made me think for a moment that Neto might be a supermarket. Is he worth a punt? He's the attacking one to get if you want to get one from Wolves. Wouldn't be clever and thinking about Adama Traore's or Silva's or Jose's, for example. It'd definitely be Neto. I don't think it'd be for me. But that run of 5 fixtures for wildcarders, I think that because I'm wildcarding, it makes it more likely. If I wasn't wildcarding, personally, I'd definitely be buying people like Jota ahead of him, I think. Because I'm wildcarding, I might go, okay, yeah, do you know what? There's a possible gain there. Will I regret it more if I don't go without him? So Neto's borderline for me. I think he's slightly more a no than a yes at the moment. And A says, hi, James, are you going to get Iheanacho in Leicester for amazing fixtures coming up? Yes, almost definitely. He's probably one of the first names on my wild card at the moment. But he does, as I said, depend a little bit on information of Harvey Barnes. Again, we spoke about it on yesterday's Clash to Correspondence. What happens when Barnes and Maddison are back fit? And we presume Maddison's going to come back in for the Manchester City game. I believe he was close to playing in the FA Cup quarter-final. So does he come in for a Jose Perez who's been playing quite well? Do they alternate the system? And then what do they do when Barnes is back as well? That's one too many. I mean, with the way they're playing at the moment, you're looking at one of Barnes, Maddison or Perez playing. And that really shouldn't be the case, probably. The easiest way is if we go back to 4-2-3-1, is to drop Iheanacho in spite of the form he's in. Or give Vardy a rest, of course, is another. But I think there's every possibility at the moment, if Harvey Barnes is not going to be back till the end of April at the earliest, then there's every chance I'll get Iheanacho and Vardy on wildcard as a possibility for me. Oliver Render says, like McNeil a lot, but get the feeling players like him and Eze are suppressed by the teams they play for. Think Buendia will catch the eye. Havertz, Jota and Barnes will all improve next season. Thanks. You're very welcome, mate. Just a note on Buendia, Oliver. We did a Patreon podcast on Wednesday with Jamie Roberts from Championship Express, and he was telling us that he'd spoke to our Norwich correspondent, FPL Badger, and the impression is that Buendia will probably still leave Norwich this year. Now, he could be playing for another Premier League club, but he won't definitely be at Norwich, so bear that in mind. Tour 17 says, worst Tottenham manager in the past 10 years. So what am I going back to here? 2011. Well, there's only 2 choices. Depends. Are we putting Tim Sherwood in there as a permanent or I don't care what his win percentage was. Tim Sherwood would be the worst. And honestly, I would probably rather just about have Mourinho than AVB. Just about. There's not a lot in it. Sherry says, thanks for answers. Have a good day. You're very welcome. Thelma says, James, what's your take on Alonso and Chilwell combo? Either plays right. Honestly, I would recommend having a look at that Twitter comment that I'd mentioned from FPL Swede. So I think it's FPL_he, I think, but you'll find it if you search that into Twitter. Really popular Twitter account. He's got a little bit of a theory on when Alonso plays and Chilwell doesn't, so I'd recommend having a look at that. Oliver Render says, love the pods, James. Only just found out about them. We'll sign up to Patreon next month. Thanks very much, Oliver. Good shout. It's probably a good time for me to end the stream there. On Patreon, if you do want to support Planet FPL on Patreon, if you want to sign up, which is not ideal because it's the end of the month, if you do it from now until the 31st of March, I will refund any money you put in there between now. You will get charged again on April 1st, and you'll have to make the first payment. But I promise you, any payment that goes in between now which is gone 3 o'clock on the 26th of March up to the 31st of March before the next payment. I will refund that payment if you want to join our community on Planet FPL Patreon. Come and join the Slack community from basic tier, where we have over 350 patrons in there now. Really live community we've got there, really supportive of everyone else. It's just think of it as a really nice Twitter space, basically, without the dickheads. From intermediate tier, we have an additional 5 podcasts per week, which next week will include our Q&A on Monday, Tottenham on Tuesday. On Wednesday is going to be a little bit of an England challenge special from a friend of mine suggested by FPL Heskibo. Thursday we'll have a quiz. Friday we will have our differential game week 30 preview show. And for everybody else, Monday I've not decided if we're going to do a main podcast or a people's poll yet, but another clash of correspondence for you. On Tuesday, FPL Gaffer Turfy Topper, Southampton versus Burnley. We'll have our Sky podcast with Andrew Ferguson from Fantasy Football Hub on Wednesday as our special guest. Another clash of correspondence on Thursday. 3-5 Who and FPL Loco Lord previewing Arsenal and Liverpool. That will be our 4th of 4 clash of correspondent podcasts in the international break. And I'll be streaming most likely 3 p.m. again next Friday with Ask James ahead of a 11 a.m. Saturday morning deadline on, I want to say, April the 3rd, which means I'll be doing the Game Week 30 deadline stream from 10 a.m. Apologies to the few of you that I didn't get to your question. If you want to DM me, please feel free to do so. I'm happy to answer your question over the weekend. Other than that, for the benefit of those listening on the audio, cue music, please, man child.